Okay, hey everyone, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really fun kind of out there watch for you from ATOWAK. Now they're dedicated to creating high quality mechanical watches with unique and bold design philosophy, really meant to redefine the aesthetic at the wrist. Really making your time more unique than others. They are inspired by Julius Caesar's cipher, once used to encrypt messages between authorities. The word ATOWAK actually can be deciphered as the word unique. Now, in terms of the type of watch, I'd consider this a wildcard watch. Some key characteristics in the language. You're looking for something like this. Of course, you're going to find a standout or statement timepiece that trades versatility and timelessness for all-out style and peak design. And I think this model really has that in spades. This is their Spaceship model in the Stardust gray colorway, and it's taking clear inspiration from the groundbreaking URWERK revolving satellite complication, while adding their own spin at a much more attainable price point. This is actually going to go for $19.49 directly from them, but you can use the code at the time of filming this. There's a code on there, AK10. You can get 10% off when you order. So this piece was sent in by the brand, but again, I do like to mix things up here on the channel, and this is something that is very, very interesting. Some of you are probably having trouble figuring out what time it is, but you know, normally when I launch these videos, it's around 10:10, and that's the time. So let me know down in the description if you're able to figure that out intuitively before I dive in and explain everything. So with that said, let's go and zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, so clearly URWERK inspired, and I will say it takes inspiration, but at the same time it adds its own flair and complexity. I mean, look at that sapphire crystal there with the complex shape there, the compound angles, very, very cool. And then of course, in terms of the time telling here, guys, essentially you're going to be looking at that disc, which is going to be the hour, and then you're going to line that up here. So you can see it is right in between 10:10 and 10:15 currently, at least that's what it's set to. So very interesting. And then you even get a disc here for the seconds. And it does have a hacking seconds. So the way that you would align that is you would have, with that triple prong, you would have one prong facing up and then the two prongs facing outward. You can see here 0 and 60. So it's kind of just going to loop back there, which I think is very cool. Of course, guys, this is going to be reflecting off of a dark studio as I'm filming this, so legibility is not going to be prime right now, but like, let's say if I was to put a white background or something that it would be reflecting off of a little bit more, it would probably help. But of course it's reflecting off of a relatively dark ceiling, and then of course a dark camera lens. So don't be too, I mean, not that somebody looks at this and thinks, oh, I want to make sure it's the legibility is key, but it's not illegible. It's actually quite legible. Of course, it's also quite complex. So there's a lot to see, a lot of moving parts, as they say. Oh my. But in terms of the dimensions, again, a little bit different out of the box here. So 42.5 at the widest point. Of course, that's the widest point. There are definitely some other points here. And then 16 millimeters at the peak. But then, of course, that is at the peak. You can see it's not 16 millimeters all the way through. 52 millimeters lug to lug. And then this is all 316L stainless steel. Of course, in this case, it is very nicely coated there. You do have, like I mentioned, that complex dome sapphire with an inner anti-reflective coating. You have a push-pull crown that is caged here at the 12 o'clock, which is very interesting. So let me try to get this here. I'll wait till it aligns. You can see the seconds hand there, how it has 3 spokes essentially. So what I'll do is I'll wait until that top spoke aligns at the 12 o'clock. Okay, so now it's hacked, and then essentially you'd be setting it. So now this would be, let's say, 10:30, right? And then you can see eventually it'd be 11, 11:30, 12. And the nice thing is, of course, that there's more than 3 hours and there's 3 discs because those discs rotate. So then that's a 1, right? So that 1 will eventually spin around here on the back end, although, you know, it's kind of hard to pick up. You can see that's a 3. So that 1 switches over to a 4. That 2 here at the 12, switching over to a 5. So very, very cool. And again, quite, I think quite intuitive. We'll go to 10:30 here just because it looks kind of good. Of course, not traditionally lined up as you would line up a handset. At the 10:10 to kind of get the full open dial. Let me give it a quick little wipe here, because there are some very cool complex finishes, and then dust it off. This thing is cool. The movement inside is going to be Miyota 9039, but let me give it a wipe on the back side too. This very nice display back. Check it out. It has a custom rotor, but it's a Miyota 9039, so you're going to get that 38-hour power reserve beating at 4 hertz or 28,800 vibrations per hour in terms of that beat rate. And then you're going to have a 3D copper dial. Of course, there's quite a bit of different coatings and finishes on there. And you know what? I do need to give this another... That's one of the, as complex as that crystal is, I just want to make sure that I am really presenting it in all of its glory without too many smudges. So, check that out. The depth alone in this space is very, very, very interesting and very cool. Then it has that 360-degree revolving satellite hour wheel. This is all going to have aviation aluminum construction in terms of those moving parts, which keeps it light enough. And then they're using printed Swiss Superluminova. Also, this is going to be 3 atmospheres or 30 meters of water resistance, which, is kind of the bare minimum when you think of something that isn't considered a dedicated dress watch. But I will say it does make sense. Look at the seams on here. This definitely wasn't made necessarily with water resistance in mind. This is definitely more of a real design exercise, if anything. Now, you do have an integrated quick release lug system here. So you can see there's a trigger. You pull on the trigger and it actually will pull in the spring bar pins so that you can pull it out. So what we'll do is we'll see here. Can see, and that's that. So technically you should be able to get this back on by doing it like so, pulling it down there, and it's nice and locked in. So really interesting timepiece. I know this is not for everyone. I do not recommend this to be your one watch. I don't recommend this to a lot of folks. If you don't find this instantly attractive and interesting, I probably wouldn't recommend it. But for those of you that are looking for something wild, weird, you already have a collection of watches, whether that be, 3, 6, 10, 20 watches, this is that extra watch. Yeah, this is not your daily driver. This is not, you're not going to the grocery store in this piece, or maybe it could be, right? Like, I guess on the other end of the spectrum, this could be your signature watch, right? You might just be that cool. I am not this cool. So for me, this would be a really fun, timepiece to wear to a watch meetup locally, at one of our Chrono Group San Diego meetups. So I think that would be really fun, especially for people that can appreciate something like this. But otherwise, again, this is going to be something that is very niche typically. But yeah, I'm impressed. And I have reviewed pieces like this, and a lot of them are very unyielding. Here's where you get the big surprise, is on the wrist. So with all that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and showcase how it wears. Okay, on my 7.5-inch wrist, you can see it wears actually surprisingly well, right? I mean, you're thinking, oh, this is 42.5 millimeters wide. Again, at its widest point, yeah, the lug to lug is 52 millimeters, but it is also lugless at that. So very different, very cool. I mean, look at the play on the complex shapes here. This is really a work of art, guys. Again, art is very subjective. Some of you may be looking at this and really not enjoying it at all. And some of you are thinking this is absolutely stunning. And I have to say, I'm in the stunning camp. This thing is just so different. Again, it's nothing that I would ask for. It's nothing that I would look for, but it's something that you stumble upon, you look at, and man, it's hard to stop looking at this piece. And then the crazy thing is it's actually surprisingly wearable, especially on this FKM rubber strap. It does taper down from a larger flare out up here down to about 20 millimeters. So very cool. You have this milled signed deployant buckle there with a bunch of fingerprints on it, which in reality you're not going to care about while you're wearing it, but hey, for video's sake, I give it another quick wipe. Of course, the finish matches the finishing on the case, and there are several options. So yeah, I'm a little late to the party on this piece. I'm sure there's already existing videos, but yeah, this one, for me, again, this might be my favorite from the brand, just because what it's doing, it's taking the complexities, right? And that mechanical artistry that you already appreciated. But I mean, I wouldn't say that this is versatile. I mean, it's still, I mean, it's very particular, but at the same time, this just is very wearable and feels quite balanced, surprisingly so. Very cool. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you notice quite a bit of perspective distortion. It's going to make the watch seem a lot more oversized versus how it looks here. Look, all of a sudden you can see the sides of my wrist more, and you can see the sides of the strap, and the watch seems more centered. So I'll leave my wrist nice and low and then just tighten up the frame so that you guys can get still detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as how this may lay on your own wrist. And again, even though my wrist is on the larger side of average at 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters, it's also quite a tall and round wrist there. So I'm not super lean right now or anything. So yeah, it's not like it's super wide, flat, and accommodating. Just there are people with smaller wrists than me that this may present smaller on, just because again, the shape of your wrist, it's at 3 dimensions, and then the way things are going to appear, we already saw that it's, largely affected by, the lens there. So, if you were to take a picture of this, with a wide angle, camera from your phone, it would make it look huge the minute you try to get close up to it. So I will say quite surprisingly manageable in the metal, and look at the way it just sits on the wrist very organically. Yeah, this is just a cool one. Look at that crystal. I don't want to undersell that crystal and just the magic and the distortion that you're going to get on that, which is cool because it's distorting the areas that you don't really need to see, versus here, of course, which is going to be where you're telling what time it is. That, it's 10:40. Yeah, 10:40. Always legible. But then when you're looking at it at harsh angles, then you can really enjoy the playful nature of the design. So with that said, let's actually get it off wrist, set for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Whoa! Surprisingly, a lot of Lume on there. Am I right? Very, very cool. Quite different, but at the same time, hey, I'm sure plenty of you were killing this watch for how illegible it is. when it's actually quite legible and quite readable, especially once you figure out how everything works. Like, you're not going to confuse, even though the other discs are still viewable, they're at a harsher angle underneath a different magnification and different angle. So they're going to be quite distorted. Whereas here, the main digits are going to be, very legible. Of course, this is all printed on there. It's not super thickly applied. So we'll go ahead and give it a bit of a blast there. Very, very cool. I dig this. So yeah, that was a nice surprise, is that of course in lighting this thing looks awesome, but it's nice that in the dark it also still looks very interesting and very cool, and you're not even seeing like everything this thing has to offer. So but one thing I always do like to work in is going to be a bit of a low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice with these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. And as you guys can see here, guys, the different facets and shapes and finishes, this thing is just extremely cool. I mean, it could easily be a movie prop. It has that much allure and design to it, but I don't think it's over designed. Honestly, I think it is quite refined in its execution, and they've really struck a sweet spot. Now, again, this is not a watch for everyone. I'm not trying to convince everybody that this is the watch for them. I'm simply just sharing my experience with this, right? Like, these spaces, because of my channel, I have been able to venture into some of the weirder and wackier types of complications here on the channel. And these satellite complications are quite popular. And, ATOWAK's not the only brand to do them. But I will say, the execution on this, I love how seriously they took this. And no, this isn't as the $100,000 watch, but I mean, in a parallel universe, maybe it could be with like the right branding, because this thing is just very, very cool. Yes, at the end of the day, it's a module sitting on top of a very standard movement, but it doesn't change the fact that they had to make all of this and make it work and make it look cool still. So yeah, this is one that really captured my imagination for sure. So closing thoughts on wrist, wears quite odd, but surprisingly kind of low-ish profile. Low profile-ish, I guess you could say, while more of a conversation piece than pure timepiece, right? Like, this isn't going to be your main timekeeper, guys. If needed, obviously it has the capabilities, but you're not going to be running your Olympic trials and using this to time it, or timing your Nürburgring lap times with this, okay? It does fit the wrist much better than less refined takes on similar architecture. So yes, I have seen various attempts on the spectrum for these types of watches. Some of them are quite big, bulky, and unyielding. This definitely doesn't have that problem. So again, very, very surprised that the construction and the balance on wrist align with how exciting and fun, this looks design-wise. It actually is still quite capable and wearable on the wrist. So kudos to ATOWAK for that. In terms of model variants, do check the site links for options and availability. In terms of compare models, guys, of course, there's always the six-figure URWERK watches, or other watches like this, even some produced from ATOWAK, that are out there. But honestly, they're so different, so wild. It's hard to say if you would like this one over another, so I won't even bother trying to compare. But if you have something down in the description you want to recommend to me to maybe take a look at and go down the rabbit hole with, I'm definitely happy to learn more about these types of watches. I'm definitely more of an everyday adventure type of watch. I'm typically wearing a dive watch, or an adventure style of watch, something in the vein of Seiko Alpinist, right? Or Seiko Marine Master, or one of their many, many competitors. So bottom line for me, guys, this is a surprisingly sleek wildcard watch with a distinctively complex layout that really can't help but impress. even at full price, guys, before any type of discount codes or sales, depending on when you're watching this, get applied, I think it still looks a lot more expensive than your typical $2,000 watch. I mean, you think about watches that cost $2,000. Typically, the big price gap between something that's under 1,000 and something that's 2,000 is going to be the branding. Specs wise, they're all going to be very similar. You know, you're going to be getting Sapphire, you're going to be getting, you know, all the niceties, in terms of construction. So for me, this is one that really stands out, and, I like that. And I like that, it looks really cool. And again, non-watch horological, you know, like, those people might judge this a little bit harsher, but there's also more understanding and ways to impress as well. I know my kids saw this and they think it's the coolest looking watch they've ever seen in their lives. So, you know, again, it's all in the eye of the beholder. But let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please like, and if you're already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.